Yo, what's up, guys? Let's talk about these T1 JDG drafts because I am a really big fan of what's been happening here, and I would love to break down like just all the intricacies that are going down within the draft phase here and why teams like T1 and JDG are getting extremely creative with pushing each other to the limits, right? The meta is constantly evolving. It's like series by series. Teams are shifting. They're preparing specific picks just for this one match, right? And we're seeing a lot of adaptations and a lot of pressure coming out from these pivots. And teams have to think extremely fast from a pressure perspective and compared to what they've prepared in order to understand what is the correct pick in this scenario. Like this, the obvious first evolution of this is the Ashe, right? I've been talking about this in like so many of the videos, but like Ashe has been coming up as probably one of the dominant bot lane picks once again, right? We've been seeing it in AD and in support, so she's technically a flex right now depending on what dynamic of the bottom lane you want, but because of her ability to curb pretty much everyone in the bottom lane, it is probably the most prominent pick right now, right? And the other thing to keep in mind here is the pressure that T1 are putting on with the Jarvan ban, and then they're responding. JDG is forced to respond with the Kalista ban because they don't want priority picks that cannot be answered, so they're going for that. This also opens up the Orianna B1, obviously, because Jarvan is banned, and because T1 are on blue side to start, they have afforded themselves a couple more bans. So they've banned out a couple of the more, let's say, chaotic openers and on 1-2 with Nico and Rakan, but this does leave the Jax, the Rumble open for the trade. And in this case, JDG actually opts for a different sort of dynamic. So in game 1, they're trying something unique with the forward composition. So they're fully aggressive, and this could be because of a stylistic choice in terms of how they want the game to play out. This is due to JDG thriving off of chaos. They do not want to play around T1's slow choke style because this is probably their specialty right now. So the main thing to keep in mind here is the punish on just these minor picks, even things like AD carry. Right now, look, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 AD carries are banned, and then all from the side of JDG, and then Xayah is picked. So technically, there are 5 AD carries gone from the pool. But I've been saying that AD is actually very diverse right now, and you don't actually have as many issues as you think. You can see this in game 1. Bard to Jhin, right? The Bard pick on blind on 5 is actually very interesting because this is probably something that they've prepared for JDG specifically for this purpose, because they've thought about the Xayah blind and their potential combinations, and the fact that they save support on 5 here when they don't have a true counter pick, I would say, is very gives a really good opportunity for T1 to actually get a free blind on 4-5. The reason for this is because of the 4 champions that they've blinded. JDG have opted to early pick their aggressive picks and pivot early in order to force T1 to kind of think about it more. But a lot of times this isn't worth it because you're sacrificing your ability to change the way your comp works, and it's a little bit hard to kind of function. Because look at the champions they have here. They have Rumble, Akali, Jax, Vi, and Xayah, right? These champions are a good forward comp, but what they need is a facilitator. So basically, you already know this slot on 5 is locked. And this is because JDG wanted to secure the Akali Vi combo on 2-3 for whatever reason, and then they want to prioritize Xayah on 4 because they ban all the other AD carries and kind of choke Yumiushi here. The only issue with this is that now look at the way they've been forced into Alistar anyway, right? T1 basically already know this is a pick, and they can secure a good matchup into the Xayah because it's Xayah blind, and it's not actually that strong when you force the support to be different. So when you have something like Bard Jhin with actually pretty strong early game into Xayah, you can actually get away with things like this, and you outscale per se. So it's like This is also afforded because of the Rel Flux they have. So they can push it back for as long as they want and pick different AD carries if they wanted to. Right? There's so many different picks that are available, and it's good that T1 are leaning into the flexibility of AD. I always rave about how flexible it is compared to all the other roles in the game right now, and it's true. AD and support have the most flexibility, and it is well established at this point. Moving on to game 2. Let's take a look at the bans. JDG take blue side this time, and they ban out Akali. So this could be a difference in priority here, because they just think coming in that this is probably one of the stronger picks. They're banning out for... The main thing to keep in mind with the bans here, T1 relatively kept them the same. JDG have banned out Rumble to prevent the 1-2, and Poppy because they don't feel like their champions can... It opens up things like the Kalista one. It opens a lot of supports. It helps open the field a lot for maybe their potential playstyle. The Jarvan ban is to open up the is to prevent or a Jarvan B1, because otherwise, if there's the Azir Orianna trade or Azir or Orianna plus Syndra trade or something of that nature, if both are open, JDG probably just opens Jarvan here, and then T1 have nothing to work off of in terms of countering. So that's why the ban is necessitated. So JDG open Orianna, very standard, and then we get Caitlyn Ashe. So right off the bat, T1 are establishing bot lane dominance here with their 2 picks, but it does mean that the whole game is centered around a bottom lane. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because they can even save R5 for top whenever they want, right? Because they're missing mid jungle top, so they have a lot of options here. They're just worried. The only thing they have to worry about is if the top pool gets choked a little bit, but I'm sure there's a lot of weak side options. So they're pre-picking. This is what happens when you get the opportunity to take the Ashe. They're self counter picking with the Kalista, right? But I'm sure JDG is aware of this, so they probably have something prepared for the situation, right? There was probably a large discussion, if you think about it, in terms of what was going to get banned here and what they have to deal with, and they ended up deciding that they have to deal with the Ashe at some point. So they do have that option. So they pick Vi once more, which is probably best jungler remaining in slot to deal with a comp like this, because you want to be able to reach this Caitlyn and get with guaranteed engage, because they pick Azir to match. They should be aware of this. So now the dynamic is pretty obvious once again. T1 are playing for backward, so they should just pick jungle on 4 to match, and also just pick something facilitated and defensive. So I'm thinking like anything goes as long as it's beefy, like Maokai or Rel. It's really not that bad. They ban out Rel as well, and they're banning out top laners that can fully pressure JDG, right? This game is going to be all about bottom lane, so they have to facilitate that as much as possible. K'Sante pick on 4/5 is pretty standard, and the Senna Kalista is the pick answer for Caitlyn Ashe, which is kind of interesting. You wouldn't think it's a normal combo, but in the context of the way these AD carries function, having a sustain tool like the Senna actually works. And this ends up being a pretty well-rounded draft, I would say. So, final form, this is the shape of it. It's clearly just a lot of different champions that are being explored in the bottom lane. So teams are learning to push back and switch their composition styles as they learn like what does and doesn't work. So that's why probably JDG tried a very aggressive start with things like the Akali, but it didn't work out, so they're pivoting. Right? This is obviously a very unconventional sort of bot lane combo, but right, you got to get creative in terms of having different tools. Ends up working out. And then T1s choose blue. This time, this is the first time that Orianna is straight up banned. I believe last time, they banned Poppy. Yes, Poppy and Ashe. So this time they get Ashe. I wouldn't be surprised if they open Ashe for Kalista or something like that. They open Kalista because it seems that they prioritize that over the Ashe, even deal with the soft counter. And we once again get a similar draft. The dynamic this time though is that it's only Azir. So when Orianna is gone, this is the only prominent mid laner remaining, let's say. So even though JDG have the priority bottom lane, T1 got something out of it and having just objectively the best, well, not objectively the best, but one of the remaining high priority mid laners. So this is obviously on JDG to get creative with their mid lane pick, because they're going to pick something different, and they have, with the triple AD and utility ADC sort of dynamic going on, we can kind of get a feel for, once again, the comp that JDG is going for. We see all that aggression come out, so we get the Renata actually goes through on 5 and we have another version of this aggression. Now, the thing with this one is that although picking Ashe Varus is going to be getting you a lot of pressure, they actually have a lot of pressure on all of their lanes here. A lot of these champs, I would say, are harder to execute on. It's totally fine that this is the case, but for JDG, I'd say if they mess up even like a couple times, or even if they have one set of deaths in the bottom lane, it's kind of hard to play this game because they are on a hard timer, and there's only so long that they can force engages and force chaos on the map. But honestly, T1 have one of the best bottom lanes. The thing they gave up, which was the Kalista, is one of the biggest issues with this, I would say. So if there's any feedback on that, I would say they gave up a lot for forcing this Orianna ban, and because of this, they were obviously very scared. Like, the fact that they banned Orianna and they didn't respond with an Azir ban at all means that they're totally okay with this mismatch, and it's very likely that this mismatch is what's causing the biggest engage issue, because as the game gets later and later, Azir just becomes an impenetrable fortress and you can't really do much about it, and this front to back capability will eventually just be able to stop every JDG engage. Touching on the last game, so this one didn't work out either, and what ends up happening this time is that T1 learned that the Kalista is probably the most prominent pick in the series, and then that gets removed, and we're back to the Azir Orianna sort of dynamic, which is totally fine. But this is the first time that Jarvan slips through instead, because JDG also feel like the Rel dynamic isn't working. So honestly, even though, remember what I mentioned about the Jarvan trade, the Azir Orianna trade with Jarvan, because JDG do not actually want to B1 Jarvan here, they end up giving T1 the slight advantage, because they give Azir and Jarvan to T1. So they pre-attempt to counter this with Bel'Veth, which is an excellent matchup into the Jarvan. And what this establishes is that JDG are able to sort of play their own version of this front to back. So the main thing that T1 should be aware of is that they should catch onto this, and the fact that JDG does not have much range because of the Bel'Veth pick. So they lock Azir, and then now they can play Poke Varus. Holy, okay, I was not aware of this. So Zeus actually locks Yone on 4, and this is probably a very tech pick to punish little Aatrox abusers like this, right? This is very unique, because this doesn't necessarily change the way that T1 wants to play this game. It could exclusively just be used as a split push suppressant for Aatrox here. Like, compositionally, it might not be the best thing in the world, but because JDG have some tools to actually stop their engage. But if T1 play it such that Zeus is perma-locking 369 in the side lane and is unable to win and get pressure or anything like that, this is where we have the issue, right? And that's probably the idea here. This forces, and the kicker here is this forces JDG to play backwards and think like, okay, they're playing engage, but because they force a backwards pick, they're forcing JDG to blind and a defensive enchanter or some sort of defensive pick. Renata is gone. They could have went Braum, but then they deal with Azir. So they wanted an enchanter to be able to match front to back while still playing backwards. So there's not many options for JDG actually. They probably could have went like, honestly, Lulu's probably one of the best ones that's remaining. because Bernada is gone. Milio is like okay, but it would be very weak to J4 already. So there's not actually very many options for JDG, which gives T1 a free blind on 5. And then they go Bard once more, because now they can use their pressure and Keria can just fly all over the map. So you see how deep these drafts go in terms of like, you're not even just direct trading at face value, you're forcing certain picks such that it opens up new slots. And that's what's super interesting about these drafts. And you're forcing teams to get extremely creative and lean onto new things. And only teams that are receptive to this and are in the right environment are able to do this. So I just wanted to highlight that with this sort of like quick overview. Hopefully this makes sense to you all. But yeah, lovely drafts from this, and I'll catch you in the next one. So yeah.